chance that automation will kick us out again if we encounter the same issue. But for now, the clock is rolling.
Director Ty
See if we pass around that T-minus 10 seconds.
So 20 seconds to go. Let's listen in.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Seconds into flight, we are feeling the rumble. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines ignited on the Super Heavy booster.
Out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it starts to ascend skyward.
Continuing to get good call-outs, our trajectory looking nominal, systems looking nominal. Just amazing to see all 33
coming up on maximum aerodynamic
pressure.
pressure, then only about a minute and a half until we get into hot staging.
At this point, we've already passed through max Q, that maximum dynamic pressure.
Incredible.
And passing supersonic, so we're now moving faster than the speed of sound.
Shaking here, feel
getting those onboard views from the ship cameras.
Now we're just about a minute away from shutting down those engines on the booster.
The next
Again, this
major
booster is
milestone is
flying
going to
for
be
its
a
second
hot staging
time
maneuver.
today.
Again, we're going to be doing that in just about 90 seconds. To do that, we're going to shut down all but the 3 center Raptor engines on Super Heavy.
We're going to see all but the 3 center engines
cut off,
turn off on the booster.
Clamps holding the 2 stages together are going to release Starship second stage.
And then just a few seconds later, hoping to see 6 engines ignite on
the sea levels right after that. The sea level engines will be splayed or just kind of pointed out at about a 15-degree angle. So if you look close and we get good tracking, you might be able to see those.
All right, hot
center
staging
right after.
About 30 seconds.
And so those 6 engines will push Starship off of the booster.
And definitely keep an eye on which way the booster flips.
Right,
first ever directional flip we're going for today should flip
right around
straight
the 3
up.
minute mark on that hot staging maneuver. Again, we'll see the booster engines start to shut down. You'll see all
those
the 3
engines
lights
powering down.
go out in the middle.
Booster engine cut off.
The engines ignite on ship, pushing it away. And that will start carrying the ship into space. Booster will start to do its flip and then move into the boost back burn, setting it up for eventual splashdown in the Gulf of Mexico.
Flip by Super Heavy booster, and you can see those 6 engines, those 3 engines on the ship ignited.
6 healthy Raptors running on ship, on its way to space. Peak that engine view. Booster doing a boost back. Chris, how's it looking over there?
Now making its way back, seeing 6 engines ignited.
It is looking absolutely incredible here in Hawthorne. As we said,
we got a
6
Starship
healthy
on its
engines
way to
on
space
ship.
and
We've
a booster
got
on the way
13 out
back
of
to the
13
Gulf.
engines on the booster. Now down to those 3, which is what we expect in the final moments of the boost back burn. Now, as a reminder, we are not recovering the Super Heavy booster today. We are instead going to do some.
First stage is currently performing.
There we had a good shutdown of the boost back burn. Next up will be the jettison of that hot stage ring.
First stage is currently performing the boost back burn.
Great call out there that everything looking nominal aboard the Super Heavy vehicle, which is returning to Earth, and we're going to be doing some experiments with it, including a higher angle of attack re-entry, as well as some engine tests as it gets closer to the Gulf. Again, because of these tests not recovering, we are sending it to the Gulf on purpose to do those tests. But again, you see the booster on the left-hand side of your screen. You see ship with 6 healthy engines continuing its ascent to its planned suborbital trajectory. Everything going very well so far for Starship's 9th flight. Now 4 minutes, 15 seconds in. great
these are
views
just
from inside
incredible
of
views coming
the
to us.
aft engine area of ship. They're looking at those 3
Everything
sea
is
level and
looking
3
good for
Raptor
both
engines
the
on the
first
right-hand
stage,
side
on
of
the
your screen.
left-hand side of your screen,
the
or the
booster doing
super heavy
its
booster,
LOX dump, that liquid
as well
oxygen
as
dump.
on
So
the
because we
right-hand
don't
side
need
of your
some of that
screen,
liquid
that
oxygen
is
propellant
Starship,
in its
or
tanks,
we also refer
we
to
vent
that as the ship.
propellant out to lessen the booster's mass as it comes in
Now, the
for
boost back
its
burn
landing.
was the first of 2 burns required to return it to Earth.
Just
The next one will be the
gorgeous
landing
views
burn,
watching these
where
2
all
vehicles
13
do
center
their
engines will
respective
initially
things in the
ignite and then
skies over
transition
Texas here
into
today.
a 3-engine
And Dan,
burn
we're approaching the 5-minute
to
mark
help
into the flight.
slow it
Super Heavy
down.
is descending
Just as a
rapidly.
reminder of the stage
What can we
1
expect here in the
test
next few minutes as it does its atmospheric
We're
tests?
looking for controlled ascent, which we have so
and
far.
that was, we had talked
stage
about Super
separation,
Heavy
which
might not have a very
gorgeous.
smooth
We
ride
cruised
down.
right
We're
through
going to
it,
be putting it through
as
this
well
higher
as
angle of attack. So we're kind of pitching
good
it up
news
a
there,
tiny
telling
bit,
us that the
increasing
path
drag.
that Starship is
We've
on
done this in wind
is
tunnels.
good.
We've
Now,
done
Starship's
this
second
in
stage
computer
is still
modeling. It
firing
shows
its
that
engines, and
sometimes
as
the
you
control
heard,
isn't
following
great.
planned flight path. The ship
But
objectives,
only one
we're
way
looking
to
for
really
hot
prove
staging
it out,
again,
and that's
cruised
to
right
get
through that.
real-world data.
We're looking
So
to
here comes
demonstrate
Super
controlled
Heavy.
ascent as well as
It should
orbital
be
insertion.
igniting for its
Now,
landing
the bottom
burn in
right-hand
just
corner of your screen shows the
about
ship
40 seconds
engine
from now.
graphics, so be sure to keep an eye on those.
We are going to relight 13
this is just
engines,
a phenomenal
then bring
test
that
so
down
far.
to 3
Super
engines.
Heavy is
As
performing
we talked
beautifully
about earlier,
today.
we will
It's
be
on its
intentionally
return
shutting
leg
down.
of the journey.
We will be shutting
Ship
down
continuing to
one
burn
of
its
those 3
6
center
engines, those
engines
larger circles, the Raptor
intentionally
vacuum engines, the inner
to push the
circles,
limits of the Super
the
Heavy booster.
Raptor sea level engines. We're
And continuing to see 6
about
healthy
30
engines
seconds
on
away,
the ship.
just under 30
3
seconds
sea
away
level and 3 vacuum
from the
engines still
start of the
ignited
boost back burn.
as the Super Heavy booster is making its way back down
Excuse me,
to
the
Earth.
landing burn
See those
on the
grid fins
booster.
doing some heavy work.
You can see the grid fins rotating.
Ignited
Those
for a
hypersonic
landing
grid
burn.
fins are guiding us through the atmosphere back towards our splashdown site. Again, we're going for a for a splashdown, a soft splashdown.
It may have ended with that landing burn.
So for landing burn, we're going to expect to see the 13 center
Does
engines
look like we
light,
lost telemetry.
rapidly bring
from the
down
booster
the
once
booster's
we started into
velocity,
that landing
and
burn.
then just the 3
Did you
in
see
the center
confirmation that the
for
booster did demise?
splashdown. Let's see if that'll work.
So the booster's flight ending before it was able to get through landing burn, but again, we're not bringing that back. We're
We're
expecting
getting
it
a few
to
engines.
make a hard splashdown in the Gulf. We were getting live data back the entire time.
And
through that
acquisition of
high and
signal.
low flight,
Let's see if we
so
can get
that
some
was
other
something
video
that
of
was
that.
really vital for us to
this
get
is a
during
test
this
objective
reuse.
today. It is still something that we're
First
attempting
reflight
to
of booster in
learn.
the books.
And
ship.
to make it that far, to demonstrate the
2 minutes
controlled
left.
re-entry up to that point is pretty darn good. Ship continuing
In about 2
to
minutes,
look nominal
we expect
with its
all 6
ascent
Raptor
burn.
engines to shut down.
This burn
That will
lasting
be
about
Seco,
6 minutes
basically
total.
second engine or second stage engine shut off.
And we're
And these are
expecting
some
that this
incredible
burn
views,
will
Dan,
end
from the aft end of the ship.
just after T+8 minutes,
Watching as
about
the
a minute
engines
from now.
stay ignited
So
with
far,
Earth in the
though, I
background.
mean, congrats to the
As
team.
always,
Making
the
it this far is
Starship
farther
avionics team,
that
the
we've gone
techs.
on
Absolutely.
Flight 2. Just wonderful views and great engine
we just
performance
heard.
from the vehicles.
The booster. But all right, we got about a minute left into this burn.
So far,
All
we've
eyes
hit
definitely
controlled
on
ascent.
ship
We're in the middle of that
as
right
we get
now.
through
We
the final
demonstrated the hot
stages
staging. Kate, as you
into
said,
its
cruised
ascent.
through
We're
that.
expecting it
We demonstrated
to start to cut those
controlled
engines off
entry of the booster.
about 45
Just dropped a
seconds.
little short of the engine relight, but hey, that's something we can learn for the next one.
Yeah. Now that view that we just had moments ago was a live shot of Star Command. There you see it again. This is our mission control center at Starbase, where vehicle operators are standing by.
right,
now the
just
next
about
milestone
30
coming up
seconds to go.
is in less than a minute.
We're in terminal
at that point,
guidance.
ship will, or I'm sorry, actually it
final
already has.
stages of this ascent burn.
There we go.
We did see shutdown of the Raptor engines.
As you heard there,
We do stagger
by the
these, so we do the
color and from
Raptors
the
first.
crowd behind
Those 3
us.
are shut down successfully. Sea level is still running.
Starship's 6 Raptor engines have successfully shut down. We heard a call out for nominal orbital insertion, which is incredible. Look at these views, Dan.
ship engine cutoff, the three most beautiful words in the English language.
And great call out that we had nominal
Congratulations
insertion.
to the entire SpaceX team. I mean, this flight pretty much just started, but we're farther than we've ever been before. We've got a Starship not just in space,
flight test
but on its coast
today.
phase into space. Just
we
to recap,
reflew a super heavy booster for the very first time in 9 test flights. Ship
we lifted off right on time
in
at
its orbital
8:25
trajectory.
a.m. We didn't have to
Again,
hold
it's
at
going
our
to
gate at all.
remain
We had
suborbital
33
for
out of
its
33
mission
Raptor
today.
engines open up.
But it ignited
light and get us through a nominal ascent.
It ignited
Another
all
successful
6 of its
hot
engines
stage.
and made it
Six
all the way
engines
through
on the ship,
SECO
propelling
just
us
now.
into orbit. We did see what looked like a nominal boost back burn. And then we did make it all the way to the landing burn this time. Didn't light all the engines that we expected, and we did lose the booster. We'll have to go through the data to figure out exactly what happened, obviously.
Still lots to come.
Be on the lookout for information about that. But wow, a ship in space. We've got a bunch of, as we said, ambitious objectives ahead of us.
Over there in Hawthorne,
over the next couple of minutes.
I think
pretty
the
much over the next
elation and the
hour,
excitement and the happiness of what we just saw achieved carried through across all of our sites. What an incredible view to see Starship back orbiting the Earth just under 11 minutes into our mission. Absolutely exciting to see all of this. And super pumped especially to see all of the team's hard work in action here today. As guaranteed, it has been an exciting evening so far for Starship's 9th test flight. We lifted off a little bit after 6:30 p.m. after a couple of holes that were triggered at the T-minus 40-second mark. But we were able to clear those, one on the Raptor, one on the tower, and we were able to lift off successfully from Starbase. 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on the Super Heavy. All 6 engines lit on ship, bringing it to its planned suborbital trajectory around Earth. But as Dan said, we've got a lot still coming up in our flight sequence. So coming up at about T plus 18 minutes, 26 seconds, we'll have the first deployment of simulated Starlink satellites planned from Starship. That will be followed at about T plus 37 minutes and 49 seconds by the relight of a single Raptor sea level engine in space. This is going to help us gather data on our ability to do a deorbit burn for future Starship missions that will go orbital. And then, of course, one of the biggest tests yet to come is the new heat shield modifications to Starship. And that'll start with re-entry into Earth's atmosphere at about the T plus 45 minute mark, which should take about 16, 18 minutes to complete.
And there we just heard call up that
today's re-entry is going to test that heat shield like we said.
One of our test objectives today is to open and close that PEZ door. That's where we will deploy Starlink satellites from in the future. So great news there that test objective.
We purposely took those 100 tiles off over very critical areas of the vehicle to be able to safely test on a flight like this suborbital trajectory into the Indian Ocean what might happen on an operational flight in those areas if we were to lose the primary heat shield tile over Starship. So very critical test coming up. And then after that, we'll have the final descent where we will again be pushing Starship to its limits. We definitely pushed the booster to its limits today to gather data, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing on that ship, seeing how the ship handles various flight conditions that we will need it to fly in as we look to one day soon bring ships back to Starbase for catch and reuse. Now, while there are payload simulators on Starship for deployment today, as we will see in a few minutes, the primary data and the primary payload for today is the data. And today, just like with Starship's previous test flights, that data is coming to us courtesy of our Starlink network. In fact, it is from Starlink that you are seeing these wonderful views of ship in space right now. So, and I can't wait to see Starlink really provide those epic views and that data transmission during reentry, which is very, very critical to getting that data during reentry. So, Dan and Jesse, it's been an exciting day so far. There's more to come as we get ready for Starship's first ever payload deploy. What can we expect next year in the next few minutes?
Thanks, Chris. Just going to reiterate thank you to the Starlink team for these incredible views today. In a few minutes, Starship will deploy 8 Starlink simulators, similar in size to our next generation Starlink satellites. The Starlink simulators will be on the same suborbital trajectory as Starship, meaning they will passively re-enter the atmosphere, just like Starship. With tests like these, we can see how Starship's payload deploy systems work in flight while ensuring that the simulator satellites pose no safety risk to people on Earth or for other satellites in orbit. Now, this also ensures that any parts of these simulator Starlink satellites that do survive re-entry splash down harmlessly in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
And then before we get there, though, we're going to have to open up that payload deploy door. So we've only ever done that one time before. Pretty sure it was Flight 3. Someone on the internet, please check me. But that was the only time we ever opened it. And we've had Starlink simulators on the last 2 flights, but we haven't gotten to this moment yet where we're able to open up the payload door and start deploying these. It's going to be pretty cool. We've got them stacked inside of the Starship payload bay, and we'll have potentially a couple of views. You saw one camera pop up. Oh, there we go. Look inside of the payload bay of Starship. You can see them stacked down in the middle of your view. There's kind of 4 on either side, so they're sandwiched on top of each other, a stack of 4 right behind each other. And then we're gonna pop the door open. It's on the right side of your screen, so we'll see that open up and then start firing those Starlink simulators out into space.
We are expecting the payload door to open in a little over a minute from now. And then once that payload door is open, about a couple minutes later is when we will start dispensing those Starlink simulators.
That's a view right at the bottom of the stack. So should be able to see them kind of firing out from right there. So really cool. And eventually these are going to carry dozens of the next generation of Starlink satellite into space, and those are going to enable some truly insane things in terms of speeds from space and what we're able to do. Starlink's been really great for Starship, obviously. Getting live video back is really cool, but just the amount of high-speed telemetry, everything we're able to get back is insane. And for a development program, that's kind of everything. We're in excess of 130 or 160. My numbers are fuzzy right now, just like my brain is. But well in excess of 100 megabits per second of downlink, and a lot of that gets eaten up by video. We've got dozens of cameras across Starship. We added several more for this flight. You saw a couple of those as we have essentially 360 degrees. Oop. Open the pod bay door now.
We are expecting the payload door to open any moment now, so we're watching out for that. Again, you're looking at the inside of Starship as it's suborbital.
Acquisition of signal, Idris.
Well, we heard the door open was in progress. It was unable to actuate all the way open, so they are going to close it back up. Hal told me no. Said, I'm sorry, Dan. Can't do that. Looks like we won't get the door open today. But that's okay. This is obviously a test we want to be able to do before we're deploying full-on Starlinks. But the real focus for this, now that we are in space, is getting to that re-entry. That is the most critical phase of Starship that we still have to prove out. All right, well, so it does look like we're not going to be able to deploy Starlinks today, but we should have pretty frequent views from Starship. They might cut in and out every once in a while, but should be pretty regular. We are in darkness right now, so might be a lot of black, but the cool part is when we get to re-entry, it's going to be daytime.
Yes, and we did that on purpose so that we can get some live daytime views as ship is returning back to Earth.
All right, so we are going to take a break. Enjoy these views as we get them. Enjoy the tunes. We'll be back in a couple of minutes when we get ready to relight one of those Raptor engines on orbit. See you soon.
Starship's flight computer is in propellant transfer demo. Starship flight computer is in the propellant transfer complete state. Pairs checkout's complete. Door is closing.
has started.
All right, if you're just tuning in, we are about 30 minutes into today's flight test, and the ship is on its suborbital trajectory. As you can see in some of the views and from some of the telemetry, we are in a little bit of a spin. We did spring a leak in some of the fuel tank systems inside of Starship, which a lot of those are used for your attitude control. And so at this point, we've essentially lost our attitude control with Starship. We are still on a path toward re-entry. We are suborbital, so no matter what, we are going to enter. However, this lowers the chances for it to be a controlled re-entry. So if you think back to Flight 3, when we had something similar happen, just the end symptom of a loss of attitude control, we were in a roll by the time we hit re-entry. So we are going to re-enter. We should hopefully still have views. The Starlink satellites are pretty robust to still maintaining contact. We've got 4 of those terminals on the vehicle, and they're pretty robust to maintaining contact even when we are in a spin, essentially. So we should hopefully continue to keep live views. It's going to still be dark until we get a little bit closer to entry, as we are a little bit, we're coming up on Africa. I believe we do swing just to the south of that continent. And by the time we start heading out over the Indian Ocean, we'll start heading into a sunrise. So, not looking great with a lot of our on-orbit objectives for today, where we were hoping to do the PES deploy and relight an engine, and then really importantly get into that controlled entry to really put the heat shield through the ringer. Nonetheless, Starship marching forward towards that re-entry over the Indian Ocean, so we'll continue to hang with it and give you any updates as things continue to change. right, so 36 minutes, 15 seconds into today's flight tests. You're seeing some flat movement here on the ship. If you've been following along, we have essentially lost attitude control on the ship at this point. It is suborbital, so it's still headed to the exact same trajectory as before. We were not able to get that payload door open and deploy those nose cones. We've been dealing with some leaks on the ship. This is also what led to that loss of attitude control. So at this point, we are kind of in a spin, and we are also going to be skipping that Raptor relight. If you've followed through the history of Starship, something similar happened, different cause, but same symptom back on Flight 3, where we weren't able to maintain attitude control in orbit. And so we're gonna skip the relight of that Raptor engine while we're in space. We are going to still proceed with entry, but as we are not able to control the attitude of the ship, as we get into entry, it will enter in whatever orientation it is in at the time, which does not bode well for the ship's heat shield, as we're not going to be essentially aligned the way that we want to do for re-entry. So it is definitely coming down. It is definitely heading to the Indian Ocean, but our chances of making it all the way down are pretty slim. So we'll still get as much data as we can. We're still getting live telemetry, live views from Starlink the entire time, and we'll continue to stick with ship as it continues on. We are about 10 minutes away or so until we start getting
Welcome back
entry.
To live coverage of our third Starship flight test, which lifted off from Starbase Texas at 8:25 a.m. Central Time.
Always,
our main objective today was to get through all of our ascent burns and collect as much data as possible, including a potential Starship entry. And we just came out of a coast phase, and we're treated to a number of HD views thanks to Starlink, including the PEZ door open-close test. So that was one of our test objectives today that we met. So that's awesome. It has been such a great day.
It has been a phenomenal test day. Just to see booster lifting a Starship to ascent, ship completing its ascent. Just a wonderful day. Kind of to recap the objectives a little bit. Booster completed its ascent, ignited its 33 Raptor engines. We demonstrated a successful hot staging for the second time. Booster completed the boost back burn, didn't quite accomplish the landing burn, and then had a hard splashdown in the Gulf. Meanwhile, ship completely successful after the hot staging. We had a good 6-engine burn of the Raptor vacuum engines and sea level engines. And then we've commanded a number of demonstrations, including the Starlink satellite deploy demo, so the payload door, as well as a prop transfer demonstration. We do still need to do some data review on those. So as we get that data back, we'll be sure to update you on social for how those tests went. We are coming up on our next major milestones, which is an in-space relight of our Raptor engine for the first time, followed by re-entry and then landing in the Indian Ocean.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's right, guys. We should be just about 40 seconds away, 40 or 50 seconds away if we do this relight demo. Do want to stress this is not a deorbit burn. In fact, it's actually going to function a little bit opposite of a deorbit burn. We're going to be raising our perigee with this burn to the lowest point of our orbit. This is just to demonstrate that we can relight a Raptor engine on ship while it's gone through a coast, while it's in outer space, while it's in microgravity. All of the different complexities that come with lighting this engine again after it's already done an ascent burn, which are now coasting through space. This is going to be really important anytime we want to do in-space maneuvers in the future, like eventual deorbit burns, any of our translunar injections that'll have Raptor engines firing back up. We may not do it. There is all of the guidance is loaded into Starship's computer itself, so if it doesn't see the values that it needs to, we could just skip the burn. So we are waiting to find out if that's going to happen or not. If it doesn't, as we said in the beginning, we're on a pretty steep trajectory that we are coming home no matter what, regardless of doing a burn. This was done just so we can really, we're in a trajectory that's really not super susceptible to delta V changes in velocity. If we were to do a burn, we've got a pretty concise footprint in the Indian Ocean that we're going to be targeting for splashdown today. It does sound like we are skipping past the on-orbit relight demo this time. Again, we'll confirm all of this through our post-flight data review, but it did sound like we did pass through that burn. So now that's going to start setting us up for re-entry.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So coming up next around T plus 49 minutes is Starship re-entry. Now, this is typically a portion of flight where we don't have communications with spacecraft because they're re-entering the Earth's atmosphere at or around orbital velocity, about 8 kilometers per second or roughly 5 miles per second. Super fast. Now, at those speeds, the spacecraft's interaction with the atmosphere results in friction and creates a plasma field around the vehicle. That blanket of plasma distorts communication frequencies, so we're basically left with a brief communications blackout.
42 minutes
now we might get some telemetry back through a connection to the tracking and data relay satellite system, also known as TGIS. But if the plasma doesn't entirely block it, that connection will be at a very slow data rate and definitely too slow for any video.
Over the Indian Ocean.
Starship and Starlink are a great partnership. Starship is so big that it will leave a wake or a hole in the plasma field as it flies through an atmosphere. You can think of a wake kind of like when you see a boat going through the ocean. It sort of leaves a trail behind it. And there's some of those great views from Starlink, giving us views of Starship's onboard videos. And so we're hoping that the Starlink on board will let us, just like we're seeing these videos now, see through that plasma field by maintaining a continuous communication log with the satellites on orbit through the wake that Starship leaves behind. Now, this is only the second time that we're testing Starlink during re-entry, so even though we do have these great visuals now, don't be surprised if we manage to get some signal hiccups through. We're still learning about what that wake will actually look like in practice and whether we're able to get that live continuous high-speed data.
That is exactly what we plan for. You know, we do plan for if something does go a little bit off nominal, that we have enough airspace cleared out for situations just like this.
To just gather as much data as possible.
Really critical phase that we need to try and gather
on one of
as much data, as much information as possible.
We're putting this flight hardware
reusable
in a real flight environment,
never been flown before.
As much as possible.
History of space flight.
Re-entry is going to be a really critical phase of flight.
That's something that Starship still has to crack.
We really want to know how the ship's going to perform, especially that heat shield.
At this point,
as we're going through the hypersonic re-entry. So if something were to go wrong during this re-entry, we want as many paths as possible to collect that information, that data, just to, again, just continually feedback
so we are expecting it to break up essentially on its re-entry over the Indian Ocean. So not able to do a lot of our on-orbit objectives today, but just the fact that we, got it into space was just a really big moment.
Now, if Starship manages to make it all the way through re-entry, we'll collect valuable data on Starship flying through the Earth's atmosphere at hypersonic speeds,
and it made it all the way to our shutdown of all the engines and stage separation, getting ship into its suborbital trajectory today.
These live views,
it did ignite
HD
its 13 engines, but it did demise at that point.
The flaps
we did
there on the
plan
ship
to
might be actuating
back down to Earth at a higher angle of attack, and we do expect it to stress the vehicle a lot more than what we've seen previously. So it's not unexpected that we did lose the booster before we got to the actual landing.
Now, we've already validated Starship's ability to fly
we're going to continue to hang out and see if we get any updates on ship.
Speeds. You might recall those suborbital flights
we might be getting some video back soon. There we go.
So getting data on aspects like heating and control while traveling way faster than we did before is going to be critical to eventually bringing Starships back from space for rapid
views
reuse.
are going to
so I mentioned those flaps. That's
be
one
a little
of the things
bit scarce potentially, as again we are
Starship to
in
help
essentially
control
a
itself
tumble. We have lost that attitude
survive
control.
the heat of reentry, which,
so
like we said
Starlink,
before,
when
we're
it's able to
expecting
connect,
that
able to
reentry
feed
to
this
occur
down,
around T plus 49
we are
minutes.
at the phase where we would expect entry to
getting pretty
start
close here.
within
what
the
you're
next
seeing
minute
here,
or so.
it
So
looks
we
like
are
the vehicle
entering
is sort of moving back and forth.
But again, we're
Part of what
entering
you're
into
also
an
seeing
airspace
is one of
and
the
a sea space
cameras,
that
this
is cleared
onboard
and
view that we
monitored
have,
in
is
advance
on the
launch
end of a
and
flap.
before we
Starship
get to
has
this
front
phase.
flaps and rear
And with
flaps
the views
in
that
the
we are
vehicle.
able to see, you
so
are
we've got
seeing
4
a lot of that
those,
plasma build
and,
up.
Oh man, we can
during
see the
re-entry,
heating
we do
on those
expect the
flaps as
vehicle
we're
to see
starting
about
to re-enter the
1400
Earth's
degrees
atmosphere.
Celsius,
This
and there
is
you can
where
see
the Earth's atmosphere
flap,
is doing the work to slow
feeling
us down.
that temperature there.
Now, like we said, this plasma field is,
as we expected with the
we hope to maintain these views
spinning
throughout.
of the vehicle,
Starship is so
we are
big
no longer
that we're hoping that the
controlling
plasma
the
field
attitude
doesn't
of the vehicle. So
entirely
this is
blanket
now
the
at this
entire
point
vehicle.
in the test
Right now,
flight,
it is not. The
to
Starlinks
see
are
News brought to you by Starlink.
Yeah, the Starlinks are still communicating
on its way
and
back
still
down to Earth.
capturing the data
And
and the
so
video that we see
we'll stick
here.
with it for as long as
Shiva,
we're
this is just
kind of
absolutely
getting
incredible
any reach
views.
back
We've
from the
never
ship
seen
as it
anything
starts
like this
to make
before.
this
This
re-entry.
is the biggest flying object ever in space.
Absolutely, Kate. And it's important to note the ascent burn that we did was to
right
get
now.
us to
And again,
orbital
we did do what's
velocities,
called
even though we were
passivation, so
on a
you
nearly
essentially
orbital
vent all of
trajectory.
your excess
So the
propellant
heating and the
overboard before
loads
you
that
hit the
Starship is
atmosphere.
going through right
That's a
now
safety measure
are
we
what
can
it
take
would
on the
be
ship
getting
while you still
if
have
it were
contact
recovering
with
from an orbital
So that
mission.
is done. It's
And
now
just the
coming
fact that we
down
have
in the
views through entry, this is incredible.
Yeah. Again, this is the
Not
furthest
controlled,
and
so we're not going to
fastest
get
that Starship
all
has
of that
ever
re-entry data
flown.
that we're still really looking forward to. This is
And you can
kind of a
definitely
new
tell by
generation of
the
kit
crowd
that
here
has
in Hawthorne.
different flaps, improved heat shield,
The heat shield tiles doing their work. We talked about it earlier. Up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit that those heat shield tiles are dissipating as we are re-entering.
That ship going orbital and eventually
Yeah, now this was one of the critical, or rather the key mission objectives that we were hoping to hit today. We have never, like I said before, this is the fastest and furthest that Starship has ever flown.
See what else we
so
can
this
learn.
is the first time that we're getting to collect this re-entry data and understand how these 18,000 hexagonal heat shield tiles are working together to protect the belly of Starship as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. Once again, the atmosphere is doing us a big favor here by...
80 kilometers altitude.
The atmosphere is actually doing us a huge favor here by acting as a braking system for Starship as it re-enters the atmosphere.
And that's part of the reason why the flaps are so important. We're using the body of Starship and the drag from the atmosphere to slow us down from orbital speed. But you want the vehicle to remain stable. You want those heat shield tiles pointed down so they can absorb the heat of the Earth's atmosphere. And so that's the purpose that they are serving during the hypersonic phase and then again during the subsonic phase.
Absolutely. So like we said, these views are being provided by a couple Starlink terminals that are positioned on Starship itself. As that plasma builds, we're hoping that we can bring these views back to you.
If you're just now joining us,
we
did have an on-time liftoff from Starbase Texas at 6:30 p.m. Central Time
decelerating
of the
again.
Flight 9 vehicle. We did have
the atmosphere
some
resulting in this plasma field,
stressing objectives today.
That is
the Super Heavy booster flew for its second
right
flight.
Now. So we'll bring those views back to you
if we get them. And
right now,
made its way to take ship all the way up to stage separation, doing its first second flight ever, which is pretty incredible. We did lose the booster on the way back down as we did fly it back down at a higher angle of attack. So as expected, we did have it demise on the way back down.
So we were able to get all the way to that landing burn, though.
Now, we actually have some heat shields here. So these are what's doing all the work on Starship right now.
Yeah, we
are
did do the
18,000 hexagonal
it was actually a great view that we saw.
So this one that I have
and then ship continued 6 healthy Raptor engines in the beginning of its flight, making it all the way to Seco and coasting for quite a while.
The one I have
we made it
on
to
the curved surfaces of
the expected time that we would open up the payload door. Unfortunately, the door did
vehicle,
not
like you
open
said,
as we expected it to, so we did not deploy the 8 Starlink satellites.
They're doing the work to make sure that
ran
the
into a couple
structure
of
of the
issues
vehicle
once Ship
doesn't
got
carry
there,
all that
but
thermal
I
load.
can tell you
so
it was
we can recover the vehicles eventually and get to rapid reuse.
For a lot of the people that
They're
were
really
standing here
lightweight.
for Ship to make it
They
there.
sound a little different than I would have expected them to, but they
it
are
was really
ceramic.
exciting to see. Ran into some issues on orbit. We weren't able to deploy the Starlinks. We eventually lost
survive
attitude control,
through this period
dealing with
of
some
entry.
propellant links
We're not sure how far we're going to make it. Again, this is the furthest that we've gotten
just to confirm,
in our test flight, but the further we fly, the more data that we can get, and that's ultimately the measure of success here, which, I mean, I think today has been a huge success given where we've gone and how much further we've gotten with both the booster and Starship itself.
Yeah, you know,
one of the beautiful things about
it's a test program
on board the
That's what
vehicle.
we're here to do. We're here to learn, and that was definitely the vibe in the atmosphere
is a very high data rate, and usually video comes after you get your telemetry.
Today, but with all of that data that came down through the Starlink system,
throughout the entry period, which is
we're
normally something we
definitely
have to
going to
wait
fix that
for
and push forward.
until after splashdown.
Also great to see the responsible engineers here in mission control.
Now, you mentioned before
talking
the
with the flight
flaps.
control
Again,
teams
the
in
flaps
Starbase.
are
We talked
protected
about
by
how
the
it's
flat
great
heat shields
having
like I
that
have.
expert,
There are
that
4
expert
of those
knowledge on
positioned
console
on
to be
Starship,
able to
2
go
at the
to at a
forward end
moment's
or the
notice,
top end,
and that really helped us make the right
and
decisions
2 at
in
the
orbit
bottom
today
or
when we
aft
decided
end,
to passivate
and
the
they
vehicle.
operate
So we will be
independently to
here looking
aerodynamically
forward to
control
Flight
the
10
vehicle's
and
attitude
some success on
or
future flights.
positioning during atmospheric flight and enable precise landing at the intended location. So today we are intending to splash down in the Indian Ocean, and we're hoping that we can make it that far, but regardless, it is an exciting end to what has been an exciting day.
Continuing to learn more about this ship, about this rocket.
I mean, we've had some tests in the past. We had suborbital campaigns where we have tested out the aerodynamic flaps at subsonic speeds. That's below the speed of sound. At hypersonic speeds, well, supersonic speeds first, so faster than the speed of sound, and hypersonic speeds, so that's more than 5 times the speed of sound. The equations of motion change, how the vehicle responds
this is exactly the SpaceX way. We're going to learn, iterate, and iterate over and over again until we figure it out. So thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you for the fine people of Cameron County, including the residents of the new city of Starbase, as well as the Coast Guard, Federal Aviation Administration, Government of Mexico, as well as the
we're about
Australian
10 minutes
Space
away
Agency.
from that point. So again, that is when Starship would be
We're going to have a whole bunch of cool liftoff stuff, so be sure to follow us on X at SpaceX for more. And we will see you back here for Flight 10. Thanks for tuning in.
And so right now we're still waiting to see if we're going to get data back from this ship. We might be in a bit of a blackout period right now. So still waiting to hear the status on it. But yeah, we got to the actual entry portion of today. We started into peak heating, which was just a really big milestone. Starship is pretty unique in the way that it re-enters, especially for something reusable. The closest parallel has been the space shuttle. When we're comparing Starship to like when we bring a Falcon 9 booster back, we're talking about 20 times the energy given the velocity that we're moving at, and all of that energy just gets converted into heat, and then we need to use those tiles to just help dissipate that heat. They're not ablative like you would see on something like Dragon, which uses an ablative in the capsule shape. So they are these tiles that are made to be reusable. So any data we're getting on the actual temperatures it was seeing during heating, all of that is just really hugely valuable. Where Starship is really unique is, and Kate and Shiv have talked about it a couple of times, is once we're through this kind of hypersonic section and we get down to the subsonic. And that's where we really learned a lot and proved that Starship's really just its basic shape could work. And we did that during the suborbital campaign. Again, if you compare it to the shuttle, which entered, it had the wings. It had a similar heat shield system, but it had wings, and then was almost flown like a glider once it re-entered and was down to those subsonic speeds. With Starship, we're not doing that. We're just coming straight down. We'll hit terminal velocity, which with Starship is around 200 miles an hour, and then we use a flip maneuver to ignite those engines, do a landing burn, and then touch down on the ground. So you don't need a runway. We're doing that, again, designed because when we go to the moon, when we go to Mars, there's not going to be a runway there for us, and so that propulsive landing is going to be really important. This is an animation of pretty much what we were just watching on actual Starship video, which is pretty incredible. But we go through peak heating. One of the benefits of today's trajectory, actually, we got closer to what the heating profile will be on just a normal mission when you compare it to our previous flights, which were headed out to Hawaii. So we go through peak heating, and then we hit subsonic, and then Starship splashes down in the ocean. Again, we're not doing a landing burn on this flight, and we're not expecting Starship to survive the impact. We're not going to be recovering any of the hardware. For now, though, we are just still waiting to see if we're going to get some signal back. We're currently at a loss of signal with Starship. Don't know for sure what its status is, and so we're just continuing to listen in. But it was pretty incredible seeing the flaps really do their thing to maneuver the vehicle as it's moving through hypersonic. One of the big trade-offs between something like Shuttle and Starship is wings can be pretty heavy. And so if we can really demonstrate that Starship's controllable through that hypersonic regime when you're coming through the atmosphere, 25 times the speed of sound, you can save a whole lot of weight by not having really big wings. So super valuable to get this data, super valuable to then figure out what we're going to do on our next test flights.
Dan, you'd brought up a really interesting point, too, that for on Shuttle, you are gliding in, going back to a runway. On Starship, because we're landing vertically, we are basically coming down, and then we've seen this during the suborbital campaign. We're not going to see it today. But during the suborbital campaign, we did the flip maneuver and then light our engines for a landing burn. And that's also really important for some of our other terrestrial destinations, that we don't have as much of an atmosphere on Mars. There is pretty much no atmosphere. There's some great views from our previous test campaigns of a landing burn and upright landing. But on the Moon, there is no atmosphere. On Mars, the atmosphere is extremely thin, so you actually need some other sophisticated techniques that other landers have used to land there. And so this vertical landing technique is really important to landing on destinations like those, which is ultimately where we're trying to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So we hope to demonstrate that landing in future missions. That wasn't one of our objectives for today. We wanted the ship to focus on opening and closing, the first demonstration of opening and closing the PEZ door, which is where we will deploy Starlink satellites from in the future, as well as gathering data on how the heat shield tiles performed during the entry period. And so far, all of that has gone really well. So overall, it's been pretty great. And it's great to see how those initial tests that we performed a couple years ago for those high altitude tests allow us to see what those will look like in the future. But this piece that we're doing today of, okay, if we are coming back from orbital velocity and we're going through that entry period, that is the missing piece, right? We already figured out how to land once the ship gets to a certain velocity or altitude, and it's really this piece that we were trying to figure out today. How do we get Starship to survive orbital velocity atmospheric entry? And we hope to find out soon.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about rapid iteration and how we do design. Part of our philosophy is testing early and often and trying to test in a way that is as flight-like as possible. But there's only so much you can do in a chamber where you're trying to simulate the atmosphere in a laboratory. So there's nothing quite like when the heat shield tile hits the atmosphere in flight to gather that wonderful data and prove out some of the analyses and probably teach us a bunch of things that we didn't quite get right.
For sure. And obviously, for those of you that have been watching along with us, those were incredible views to see of that entry period where we saw the heat generating because of friction as the belly of Starship was making contact with the Earth's atmosphere, and that resulted in some plasma. So as Dan said before, we believe that we're in a bit of a blackout period at the moment. We are expecting the vehicle, if it's still alive, we would be expecting the vehicle to be approaching subsonic or slower than the speed of sound speeds in 3.5 minutes from now. So if it's still up there in one piece, it still has a way to go. We're not there just yet. But we saw that plasma field building up around the exterior, which can blanket the entire vehicle, as it does with all of our Dragon missions, and we're at a loss for telemetry at that point in time.
Yeah.
So
Dan's seen a lot of those with Dragon missions that he's supported.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are hearing through some of the telemetry that we did. It did look like we lost Starlink and our TDRS data flow at the exact same time. Now, if both of those signals are cutting out at the exact same time, that could mean we lost the ship. It has been several minutes since we've gotten any data from Starship. We are waiting just a couple more minutes just to see if we can get any additional confirmation, but that is one data point that we're tracking, and that could indicate that we had a loss or a breakup of the ship during that re-entry. So might not make it all the way to splashdown today, but we were able to get through the early phases of re-entry, hit some of that peak heating, which was just really incredible to see a Starship coming back from space after getting all those views from space for the very first time. So we'll just keep on listening in on the loops here, see if we hear anything over the next couple of minutes. And that might bring a close to a pretty successful day so far. So again, we did lose the TDRS. That's the tracking and data relay satellite. That's the satellite system that pretty much every spacecraft operating in orbit right now will use to get data. We were able to get some signal through that. And then we were also getting data back through Starlink.
Live view here of mission control down at Starbase. So these are all the folks who are experts on the various different systems, taking a look at the live data that we did have. Probably in mission mode still,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
It would be so tough to stay focused with what an exciting day we've had today.
Yeah, to quote Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. We don't know, as Dan said. We did lose connection with TDRS, which is the tracking and data relay satellite system, and Starlink at the same time. So it is a realistic possibility that we lost Starship, which honestly was always on the table. We didn't know how far it was going to get. The further we could fly and the more data we could collect was always the biggest win. And so regardless of, if we did lose the vehicle and we are not able to, make it all the way to our intended splashdown, note that we weren't intending to recover this vehicle, either vehicle, the Super Heavy booster nor the Starship. We weren't intending to recover either of them. They were both going to basically hit at terminal velocity and break up upon contact with the surface of the ocean. So we're standing by to hear whether or not we are going to be able to get telemetry readings back, but we are possibly anticipating news that we lost Starship due to basically a double blackout from TDRS and Starship data at the same time.
But it's worth mentioning, this is the first time that we have come back at these speeds
absolutely
in any of the test flights that we've done so far with Starship. So we are trying to prove out that the heat shield works as intended, that the controllability at those hypersonic speeds works as intended. So if we were able to get back any data on that, that means the next version, what happens on flight 4, 5, 6, is going to be better.
And we must be able to get some, because we saw incredibly gorgeous high definition views of that entry period whenever it was initially starting. So we must have gotten some data
today
there.
Has been otherwise a phenomenal day.
Incredible.
Liftoff on time, full ignition of all of the boosters, engines, successful hot staging, and then ship took it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. We were able to see the ship actually make it further as well as the booster. We were hoping that the booster would perform a soft water landing, but we lost it during just before it was able to ignite the landing burn. But the ship continued on. We saw all six Raptor engines on the ship ignite and then shut down for second engine cutoff. And we saw some amazing views as well, and it's just been certainly a day that I will be taking many screenshots and using them as my computer desktop background for, well, until the next Starship launch.
When we get even better views, I'm sure.
Exactly.
And we also hit a number of our other ambitious test objectives. We had a chance to at least initiate the commands for a propellant transfer demo within the vehicle. This is something that Starship's going to have to do in the future, and these sort of transfers haven't been done at this scale before, so that's a first as well. We also were able to demonstrate that the payload door functions.
And we got to see that,
And so those commands were sent. Again, data review to come and make sure that everything performed as expected, but that's going to be critical to deploying payloads in the future once Starship becomes operational. So a number of test objectives hit, much more accomplished than Flight 2, and making steady progress towards a fully, rapidly reusable, reliable Starship.
Absolutely.
And hey, Kate, and hey, Shiva, we were just hearing on the loops, we are making the call now that we have lost Ship 28. So as we were possibly expecting, we lost the data a couple of minutes ago. We haven't heard from the ship up until this point, and so the team has made the call that ship has been lost. So no splashdown today, but again, just it's incredible to see how much further we got this time around. We had a couple of those ambitious objectives that you guys were just walking through that we're able to take advantage of while Starship was in outer space flying over our planet for the very first time. So that was just really incredible. Obviously, there's a lot to go through. Everyone always wants to know right off the bat what happened. Takes us a little bit of time, but I can assure you as soon as we start finding things out, we're going to let everybody know. And I know everybody's going to be excited for the next one. I mean, as I pointed out in the beginning, there's 4 super heavy boosters either fully stacked or getting stacked right behind me. We've got other ships ready to go as well. So it's going to be a really busy time down here at Starbase as we look to really fly Starship as much as possible, get this vehicle ready to go for all the important things it's got to go do.
And with that, we got to say a huge congratulations to our teammates and everyone who's supported the Starship program. There's been flames and reds along the way, but third time's the charm, and we made it to space. We also a big thanks to all of our future customers for your support. And we want to give a big thanks to the people of Cameron County, Texas, for their support, as well as the Coast Guard and the Federal Aviation Administration.
Be sure to follow the SpaceX account on X for more updates from today's test flight and future Starship tests. But before we go, we want to wish SpaceX a very happy birthday. The company was founded on this day in 2002 when it basically consisted of this small team, a carpet and a mariachi band. I don't know about you, but we're feeling 22. Also, it's Pi Day.
Yeah, but I mean, Pi Day is constant and never ending, so shouldn't every day be Pi Day from now on?
I mean, that's a really good point, and I think after a test like today's, we all deserve some pie.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.